I've been reading Guide to Bodhisattva's Way of Life, Shantideva, and focusing on chapter 6, which is chapter on fortitude, or sometimes it's translated as patience. And this is the kind of book that each time you pick it up and read a verse or verses, you get more. It's just amazing to me. So I thought I'd read a few verses and then just comment a little bit. So the first verse is, whatever wholesome deeds, such as venerating the Buddhas and generosity, that have been amassed over 1,000 eons, all will be destroyed in one moment of anger. There is no transgression like hatred, and no fortitude like patience. Thus, I should strive in various ways to meditate on patience. The mind will not experience peace if it fosters painful thoughts of hatred. I shall find no joy or happiness, and able to sleep, I shall feel unsettled. So when I think about this and think about anger, we're so conditioned, at least I have been in my life, when I'm angry to immediately think about that there's something outside that has brought me this anger, like it just comes at me. And yet the reality is I create my own anger. It's from me. And that's been very helpful for me to remember and kind of practice with, because then that puts the responsibility for my happiness right on myself instead of something outside of me. And it's not a quick process, at least it hasn't been for me, I will say. But I think to get clear about where anger comes from, one has to develop some compassion for oneself. When I'm angry, I'm miserable. So out of compassion for myself, I want to change that anger and find some peace again. And when I think that way, it takes the focus off anything outside of myself. It brings it back here, because this is where it develops, this is where it resides, this is where it comes from, this is where it abides. And we see really the high masters in this tradition who, no matter what happens, their mind is steady and calm and compassionate and peaceful. And so we know that we have the capacity to do that if we practice. But the first thing, at least for me, has been to dismantle this idea of whenever I am unhappy, that I look outward. Because it isn't outward, it's inward. Yeah. I always have the choice in how I react. And at first it doesn't seem like that at all, but we do have that choice. And so there's many different antidotes, many different practices to utilize to stay steady in the face of having a big reaction over something that is unfolding in front of me that I don't like. And generally, my anger really comes from my attachment. If I have exaggerated the qualities of something or someone, and then they act differently than that, then I react with anger. So again, it's my own making. It's of my own making. Yeah. And so we can work on this in many different levels, many different ways, looking at what it feels like in my heart when I start getting attached. So it's kind of a buzzy, in a kind of adrenaline feeling, and I can feel quite solid, and here I am, and what you're doing isn't whatever. And so sometimes you can catch it there. It's like, wait a minute, this feeling is going to bring misery. Stop it now. Drop it. Step away. Take a deep breath. All these different things. Interrupt the moment, And as we continue to practice this more and more, then we get some skill at it. And then we start keeping our mind steadier and less afflicted, less disturbed, and that feels wonderful. Then we start getting a feel of some happiness and what is possible. And then just naturally our heart wants to go in that direction. And then it's very difficult it's actually painful to step into a mind and a heart that's filled with anger. It's actually painful. But at first, when we start this practice, that's just the natural thing. Somebody does something and I'm angry at them and it's their fault. And so to interrupt that first wrong thought is very helpful. And we have to practice that for a while to dismantle it, because it's really firmly built in the mind, at least in my mind. I don't know. Maybe you don't have this problem at all, so I rejoice if that's true. But, so I think, again, to just remember that anger that is in my mind is created from me, by me, and I'm the only one that can turn it. If I wait for the environment to be the way that I want it, I will have a miserable life and then will die in misery. So that might not be the best way. So instead, I start transforming what's going on inside here. And then as we do that, then those around us are in more ease. We feel happier. We start creating a meaningful life where we have some space and energy to actually do positive things for others. It ends up being quite nice then. So let's think about creating that kind of mind space and environment for ourselves and others.